My name is Sarah, and today I'm going to be answering questions about college or any specific questions like UBC and Sauder. So I'm going to be separating these questions into different groups. For example, first I'll start out with some general college questions, and then I'll go more and more specific into study abroad or employability and also UBC and Sauder. So please look in the description for all the timestamps. So let's first start with some general college questions. Okay, so the first question, it says, this is more of a general UBC question, but could you talk more about commuting to school or live on residence? I also heard that Vancouver's housing prices is really expensive too. So in terms of living on residence or living elsewhere, I did live on residence in my first year or freshman year. I wanted to experience more of the college life. I went into it thinking that I would go to all these parties and have all this fun and be friends with like everyone on my floor. But to be honest, it was very underwhelming in the end. I think I went into it with really high expectations, but also I didn't go and make that first step to make all these connections or go to all these parties. I was more of a homebody, and looking back on it, I definitely regret not taking all these chances to do all the residence stuff that I could have done. So after my first year, I moved back home. I live in Richmond, which is a different city from UBC, and I would either carpool with my friend to go to school or take the bus. But taking public transit to go to school, especially in Vancouver or Richmond, it does take a lot longer. It took like an hour and a half to go all the way to school. There are pros and cons to being a commuter. Obviously, the biggest con is that it takes so much of your time away in a day. If you think about going there is an hour and a half, coming back and is another hour and a half, you're basically spending 3 hours of your life every single day on public transit. I think that public transit also was like a big deterrent for me to actually go to school, because in the end I would just be too tired or unmotivated to actually take public transit to go to school, and I would just end up skipping that class, which is a really bad habit. But the pros for commuting would be that obviously it's a lot cheaper. If you're a student, you will have a student pass or a U pass. It is definitely a trade-off that people will have to go through, but there are a lot of people who are commuters to school. And also in terms of living on campus or renting out a space by UBC, I think that renting out a space will give you more freedom, but it might be actually more expensive than actually living on campus. Be sure to do your research, because there's a lot of different information out there and a lot of different buildings. For example, there are specific first year buildings like Vanier or Totem, and I think there's another one called Orchard Commons. I'm not sure if that's specifically for first year, but it wasn't there when I first started. There are other buildings that are more like apartment style, where you'll have to share one apartment with 4 people. So there are a lot of different options out there for you, and you just have to weigh the pros and cons of how much money it is versus staying on campus, being closer to school. Something that I didn't realize when I lived on campus in first year was that I thought that I would go to class more often and I would be on time more just because I was closer to class. But in the end, it just made me feel like because I was in such close proximity to class, I wasn't as worried about getting out of my bed. So I actually skipped more classes when I was living on campus. So the next question is, hey, your video really gave me an overview of what is UBC like. Maybe could you do a video about international students or how we can finance our studies at UBC? So for international students, because I wasn't an international student, I can't speak too much about it. So I'm sorry about that, but you can find a lot more about tuition costs for international students online, but I do know that it is a lot more than domestic students. In terms of financing your studies at UBC, there are a ton of different ways that you can finance your studies. I will do a separate video on this in the future, but just to give a little touch on the topics, there are a lot of different jobs that you can take at UBC. For example, in the food industry, there are a lot of on-campus restaurants that you could work at. You can do note-taker positions, you can do work-learn opportunities with professors where you learn or do a research project or you help a professor out and you also get paid for it. And I'm not sure if it can actually finance your entire studies while you're an international student, but it will definitely help you out. There are other opportunities such as doing internships or co-ops. I know a lot of people who do co-ops or do summer internships, and they work the entire summer in order to pay their tuition for the following year. So those are all different options that you can do, but I will definitely do a video more on this in the future. Next question is, like you were, I am more of a science and math person, but I don't know if I'll be able to study that in university, especially when it gets harder. I got into U of T engineering. I was wondering if there is any way to tell if I like studying business or if I'm suited for it. So I mentioned in one of my videos, I think it's the honest thoughts about business school video, on how I was more of a science and math person and I thought I was going to go into sciences in the future, but I actually chose business instead. But I think that in terms of trying to know if you like studying business or not, I think I got lucky because I chose business without really knowing what it really entailed. But actually when I went into the courses, I thought this was really interesting, and I actually was happy that I chose this path. One of the preconceptions about choosing business school was that you'll have more employment opportunities if you come out as a business student, which is kind of true and kind of not true. I think there are employment opportunities in all facets of learning. In terms of whether you like business or not, I think for me it was more of, I really enjoyed marketing, so I really liked looking at ads or just like ways that a business could figure out what was the problem with that business and how they overcame it. I think if you enjoy kind of reading these articles or things about that, then you probably would enjoy business. With that being said, there are a lot of different aspects within business school. For example, there's human resources, there's marketing, finance, accounting, real estate. There's so many different facets of business school, and I think you just have to do a lot of research in order to see if you'll actually like that. The next section would be study abroad questions. So the first question was, how many semesters are you allowed to study abroad while attending Sauder? So I don't think there is an actual limit on how many semesters you can study abroad in. I know a person who did study abroad for 2 different semesters in 2 different parts of the year. When I was in Korea for my study abroad exchange, I only did it for 1 semester, which was 4 months, but I knew some people who did it for 2 whole semesters, which was 8 months, but they were actually there for a whole year. So you could definitely do that. I don't think there is a limit on how many semesters you can do study abroad in, so definitely take advantage of that if you have the means to do so. The next question is, do you know if you're able to do a study abroad term and then a co-op in the same city? Like just spend 8 months there and then combine the 2. Yeah, you can definitely do that. I think the only problem would be trying to find a co-op in a foreign country. It is difficult, but it's not impossible to do so. When you're in co-op, there is a job board that you can scroll through all the job opportunities in. There are not a lot that I've seen that are international besides Canada or the US. So you can do co-op or an internship in a different country, but you'll probably have to spend more time looking for those positions yourself. The first one is a 2-part question. First, in terms of employability after university, do you feel that UBC has a disadvantage compared to other Canadian unis like Rotman, Smith, or Ivy? I'll speak to the first part first. In terms of employability after university, UBC is definitely a major university within Canada, but if you're talking more specifically about business school, you're looking to find a full-time opportunity in Toronto instead of being in Vancouver. There's definitely a slight disadvantage, more because those big companies in Toronto and the people who are hiring are alumni of those universities in Toronto, such as Western or UT. And alumni like to hire people from their alumni, but UBC has definitely over the years have gotten a lot more alumni into these big companies. I don't think that it will be a big issue in the future. And the second part of this question is, how likely is it to secure a job after finishing Sauder in a field like finance? Finance is definitely one of the top choices that people go for when they're in business school. It's because people think that if you're in finance, you make the most amount of money. Of course, like investment banking is like the top choice you could go for in finance. So yeah, if you're in finance, there's going to be tons of job opportunities for you to go for, but there's also a lot of competition. It's not really about employability in just finance, but I think that every facet of business, such as like human resources or marketing or accounting, they all have employability options. It's more about how you market yourself towards the company and how you differentiate yourself from your competitors, basically. And the next question is really nice. Hi, I will be attending Sauder this year. I just hope we have Jumpstart this year. Your advice is literally so genuine. Not many people do this. Much respect and love for that. Oh, thank you. Also, since you've been at co-op, what's the pay at Sauder's co-op like? Is it enough to finance UBC tuition as they say on the website? I really appreciate your help on this. Thanks very much. Warmly, Manav Kakar. Thank you, Manav, for your nice comments. So in terms for your question on what's the pay at co-op like, so when you're in the co-op program, the program doesn't pay you, it's the company that pays you. So the pay that you receive really depends on what company you're working for and what their pay for you is like. I don't know if it is enough to fund your tuition like what they say on their website. If you do save properly and you use your money wisely, then I think it's definitely possible. The range for an co-op or internship pay can go from $2,500 a month to $4,000 a month, and it can even go higher than $4,000. The pay is lower compared to if you were a full-time student, and that's just because you are an intern or a co-op, and they're not going to keep you for long. But in the end, it's more about what company you're working for and if you can negotiate your pay properly.
Hi, it's Editing Sarah here. I also forgot to mention that if you're in the co-op program, you also have to pay a co-op program fee. If you're in Sauder, I know that it's $700 per semester that you're in co-op. At SFU BD, I know that it's around $1,000 per semester, and it really depends on each school you're going to know how much the fee is. I think $700 is definitely a very steep price for what you're paying for. They do help you with resumes or job interviews, but I think what you really are paying for is the job board, because there is a job board. It's an exclusive co-op job board that you can have access to, and you can look for all the job opportunities on there. If you're not in the co-op program, however, you can save a lot of money. You'll save $700 per semester because you'll be looking for those internships on your own. So it's really just a trade-off between looking for internships on your own or paying more money just to have exclusive access or to a job board, basically. So that's it.
Okay, the next question is, I am a prospective student of Sauder, but do you think it's the best school for finance? Well, there's a lot of people that want to go into finance. I really want to know about their internship and how many students out there of 10 get to do an internship in Sauder. Okay, so if Sauder is the best school for finance, I think that if you want to go into finance, a lot of more of the bigger banking companies are in Toronto, so maybe school in Toronto might be a better bet for you. However, in Sauder, there are a lot of opportunities for finance students. Also, another thing is that, I used to think that I wanted to go into finance, but after I was in 2 years of school at Sauder, I realized that marketing was a better option for me. So definitely keep all your options open and don't just bulldoze your way through one option, because you might find that a different option might be better for you and your lifestyle or just your general interests in the future. And how many students out of 10 get to do an internship in Sauder? I would say that every student probably get to do an internship in Sauder. They don't pick and choose who gets to do an internship or not. It's basically just all the companies that you apply to. Sauder isn't the deciding factor in the end if you do an internship or not. It's more of if you're going to be applying to the company and if the company decides to choose you or not. So in order to stand out from everyone out in the crowd, you could be doing networking events, or you could join some clubs and just get your name out there or try to gain more experience so that you can talk about that and utilize it in your resumes or your interviews. The next question is, I got an offer from Sauder and I was also considering the Bucks program. If you could go over the pros and cons of Bucks, that would be great. So Bucks is a combined major in business and computer science. And I think most of the people who go into Bucks will come out working for tech companies because they learn a lot about coding in different languages and data management and things like that. So I think that Bucks is a great option if you're into computer science and you're into business. It was one of the options that I considered as well. If when I was trying to determine what major I wanted to go into, I thought that maybe I wanted to switch into a completely different direction and go into Bucks because I was really interested in computer science. So I think that it is a great option if you are into it. Of course, when you first enter a major, you don't even know specifically what it will entail until you're like 3 years into the program, but it's never too late to switch out of it if you don't like it, or to switch into it if you decide that you do want to go into it. I am not a Bucks student, so I cannot speak too much into it, but you can definitely reach out to any Bucks students on LinkedIn if you can find them and just ask about their experience. A bunch of us who have been in the program before, we are always really happy to help students out if they have any questions, because we've all been there before. So don't be afraid to reach out to anyone and ask about their experience or ask any other questions you have. And my last question is a two-part question. Hi, how are you? My name is Maria. Hi Maria, I'm doing well, thank you. I'm from Chile and planning to do a semester in UBC as an exchange student. Here in Chile, I'm studying business and computer science, and I saw the video you did about recommendations to students going to UBC, and I had a couple of questions about UBC. First, I was wondering what electives or business courses you would recommend. Like you said, I don't do well with GPA boosters when I'm not interested, but in general, I love business courses. So I'll answer the first part of the question first. What electives or business courses you would recommend? I was planning on doing a whole video on courses I would recommend to take in UBC, or just general courses, I think. But I can just name a few off of the bat. For business courses, I really enjoy digital marketing. You do get to learn a lot about digital marketing tools and techniques that you will learn in the real world. And other courses I would recommend in terms of electives, I think that you really just have to think about what you're interested in, because as long as you're interested in that course, you will do well in it. I've taken so many GPA boosters, or so-called GPA boosters, and I have not done really well in it because they were like science courses, and I'm not even that good at science, and I don't even know why I took it, because it was just dreadful for me to even study for it. And it turned out to not be a GPA booster because I didn't study as well for it, and it just lowered my GPA because I got a worse mark. But if you are interested in anything, there's like a wine science course that would be super interesting, and I definitely would have taken it. You get to taste wine, but you also learn a lot about like the chemistry side of it and the different like undertones or tannins and stuff about wine. There was an anime course that my friend really enjoyed. There was a course about like Korean culture and K-pop, and I think that would have been really cool as well. And there are so many different courses that you can just scroll through a list at UBC and take the electives that you're interested in. Also, I'm not sure if this works for every university out there, but when I was at UBC and I did an exchange semester, I went to Korea and I took the courses that interested me because I only got credits for those courses. The grades that I got in Korea didn't actually transfer back to UBC, and I only got the credits for it. That means that even if I did get a bad grade in Korea, it wouldn't affect my GPA coming back as well. So do inquire about that to see if it's the same for your home university, because that would just be another incentive for you to take any courses that you're interested in, knowing that it wouldn't affect your GPA coming back. And then the second question is, you talked about co-op. Do you know if I'm going on term 2 if I could get a summer internship for June or July? Or do I need to get that internship before I leave Chile? So if you are an international student, you won't be able to do co-op. Co-op is specifically a program for your home university, and I think only Canadian universities do have co-op, but you can certainly do an internship in Canada if you'd like. However, most internships in Canada are 4 months long in the summer, from May to August, but there are specific internships that you can do for 2 months or 3 months. It just depends on the company that's hiring you, and you can definitely negotiate your starting date and end date as follows. In terms of looking for an internship, you can look for an internship while you're here on a study term. From my experience, most internship opportunities don't come out until 1 or 2 months before the internship starts. But if you are applying for a big company, they do hire even a year beforehand, so do keep your eyes peeled for all these opportunities out there. And that wraps up my video for today. Thank you guys all for watching, and like I said before, if you guys had a question that I didn't answer in this video, please leave a comment below with all your questions, and I'll be sure to address all of them in a video in the future. And I think that's it, so stay safe everyone, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!